What else are we learning about this operation?
Good morning, Griffin. A daring operation in the pre-dawn hours in 2 a.m. local in Caracas, 1 a.m. East Coast time. U.S. Special Operations Forces flew in from off the coast of Venezuela to snatch Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro and his wife. President Trump announcing the news on Truth Social a short time ago. I'll read it for our viewers. It says, quote, "A large-scale strike against Venezuela and its leader, President Nicolás Maduro, who has been, along with his wife, captured and flown out of the country. This operation was done in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. Details to follow. There will be a news conference today at 11 a.m. at Mar-a-Lago. Thank you for your attention to this matter. President Donald J. Trump." And just before the assault force arrived at Maduro's compound, you can imagine the intelligence that U.S. intelligence agency had to have to know where to send the assault force to be able to locate and grab Maduro as well as his wife. You had numerous airstrikes throughout Caracas targeting Maduro's forces at a military base in Caracas as well as an air base, also Venezuela's largest port. And this is something President Trump has been threatening for months. It started with the drone strikes on the alleged drug boats in the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific, over 24 to date, killing over 100 people. You saw it when U.S. forces seized, as a law enforcement matter, the oil tankers that the Trump administration said were associated with the Maduro regime. The goal is to cut off the drug and oil revenue stream for Nicolás Maduro. And for months, we've heard President Trump say that Maduro must go. And Maduro was very defiant. Despite repeated threats from President Trump, over 15 times, President Trump said he will be striking on land. Recall on Monday, we heard the president confirming that the CIA struck a target along the coast of Venezuela, destroying some of Maduro's. Again, this has been something that is not quite unprecedented. We saw in 1989 with the seizure of Manuel Noriega from Panama. This is something that the president wanted. We had not heard from President Trump, almost shades of Operation Midnight Hammer when those B-2s struck Iran. But we haven't seen President Trump over the past 2 days. We heard from him on New Year's Eve. It was interesting. A reporter asked the president what his goal was for this coming year. He replied, peace. Well, for the President Nicolás Maduro, he didn't get that. Now, we did hear from Maduro yesterday, guys. He sounded like he was almost pleading in an interview done from a car, believe it or not, saying he was almost begging the Trump administration for a deal with oil. Of course, many American oil firms were kicked out of Venezuela decades ago. We've heard from President Trump in recent days saying he wants that oil back and the company's in.
Well, and it's excuse me, pretty clear, Lucas, that the clock had run out for Nicolás Maduro to come to the table despite that interview that he did. Lucas, we're just getting a tweet this morning from Senator Mike Lee, who is saying just got off the phone with Secretary Rubio. He informed me that Nicolás Maduro has been arrested by U.S. personnel to stand trial on criminal charges in the United States, and that the kinetic action we saw tonight was deployed to protect and defend those executing the arrest warrant. This action likely falls within the president's inherent authority under Article 2 of the Constitution to protect U.S. personnel from an actual or imminent attack. It's interesting as we read that, Lucas, the vice president, Delcy Rodriguez of Venezuela, took earlier to state TV in Venezuela demanding proof of life of Maduro. But it's pretty apparent that it's unclear who is running that country right now. You're looking live at some of the strikes that were carried out there. Do we have any more indication about who is running the country there now, and whether or not any of the other individuals like the vice president and others associated with Maduro's regime?
That statement from Venezuela's vice president confirming the news from President Trump that President Nicolás Maduro and his wife were seized by that American assault force, likely either the Delta Force or SEAL Team 6, flown by the 160th Special Operation Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers, the most elite pilots in the world. It's notable we saw the video of those U.S. Army helicopters flying low over Venezuela under the cover of those airstrikes in darkness, that you didn't see any Venezuelan surface-to-air missiles or AAA anti-aircraft fire. And it's notable, Griff, that I spoke to Elliot Abrams, President Trump's former special envoy.
What happened was not a routine announcement or a symbolic warning. According to Fox News correspondent Lucas Tomlinson, the world woke up to a shock when former U.S. President Donald Trump publicly declared that Venezuelan leader Nicolás Maduro and his wife had been captured during what Trump described as a large-scale strike and flown out of the country. The statement immediately triggered global headlines, diplomatic panic, and intense debate over legality, power, and the future of Venezuela. Trump's announcement came after reports of explosions and sudden military activity in and around Caracas. According to details provided by Lucas Tomlinson, the operation was not a single airstrike but a coordinated, multi-layered action involving intelligence assets, special forces, and aerial dominance. Trump claimed the mission was planned over months, combining surveillance, intelligence sharing, and rapid response military units. He described it as decisive, controlled, and necessary, stating that Maduro had crossed lines related to narcotics trafficking, regional destabilization, and threats to U.S. security interests. As the operation unfolded, airspace over parts of Venezuela reportedly became restricted. Communications disruptions were noted, and Venezuelan state media initially went silent. Trump later said that elite units moved swiftly to secure the location where Maduro and his wife were present, taking them into custody before loyalist forces could react. According to the claim, they were immediately transferred to a secure aircraft and flown out of the country, ending Maduro's grip on power in a matter of hours rather than years. Lucas Tomlinson reported that U.S. officials framed the action as a targeted operation rather than a declaration of war. The emphasis, they said, was on leadership removal, not civilian infrastructure. Trump reinforced this narrative, insisting that no American lives were lost and that efforts were made to minimize casualties. However, independent confirmation from international observers remained limited, fueling uncertainty and speculation across global media. Within Venezuela, chaos followed. Emergency meetings were reportedly held among remaining government officials. Supporters of Maduro called the event an illegal kidnapping and an act of aggression, while opposition figures celebrated what they described as the collapse of an authoritarian regime. Streets saw both fear and celebration, depending on political loyalties. Banks closed, military checkpoints multiplied, and rumors spread faster than official information. International reaction was swift and divided. Some U.S. allies privately expressed concern, warning that forcibly removing a sitting head of state could set a dangerous precedent. Others viewed the move as the end of a long-standing crisis that diplomacy had failed to resolve. Russia, Cuba, and several Latin American nations condemned the action, calling it a violation of sovereignty and international law. Calls for an emergency United Nations session quickly followed. Inside the United States, the announcement ignited a political firestorm. Supporters of Trump praised the move as bold leadership and a long, overdue response to what they called a narco state. Critics, including constitutional scholars and opposition lawmakers, questioned the legality of the operation, asking under what authority such an action was taken and whether Congress had been properly informed. Legal experts warned that the operation could face serious challenges under international law and U.S. constitutional principles. Trump, however, remained defiant. He argued that Maduro was not a legitimate leader but a criminal figure protected by power, and therefore traditional diplomatic rules did not apply. He claimed the operation made the Western Hemisphere safer and sent a message to other regimes accused of similar activities. In his words, the era of endless warnings and no action was over. As reports continued to emerge, questions grew louder. Where exactly were Maduro and his wife being held? Would they face trial, extradition, or international proceedings? What would happen to Venezuela's oil industry, military command, and civilian population? Analysts warned that removing a leader does not automatically stabilize a nation, especially one already fractured by economic collapse and political division. By the end of the day, one fact was clear. Whether praised or condemned, the operation marked a dramatic escalation in U.S. involvement in Latin America. It challenged long-standing norms, reshaped regional politics, and placed Venezuela at the center of a global power debate. Trump called it a success. His critics called it reckless. History, many said, would be the final judge. And as the world waited for verification, legal clarity, and the next move won, reality dominated every headline. The capture of Nicolás Maduro, if fully confirmed, would not just be a Venezuelan story.